We've all been there, frustrated, upset, maybe even furious. A bad driver cuts us off, a coworker takes credit for our idea, someone we trusted lets us down. And in that moment, it feels justified. The anger feels right. But here's the real question: what do we do with that anger? Because let's be honest, most of the time, we let it control us. We lash out, hold grudges, or let it simmer until it becomes resentment. And what does that get us? Nothing, no progress, no solutions, just more negativity. But what if, just for a moment, we chose a different path? Anger is one of the most powerful emotions we experience. It surges through us, demanding our attention. Our heart races, our muscles tense, and for a brief moment it feels like we are entirely justified in our frustration. But here's the thing: anger itself doesn't solve anything. It's not the solution, it's the signal. Think about a smoke alarm. When it goes off, it's not the fire, it's the warning. It's telling you that something is wrong, that something needs your attention. But what would happen if instead of addressing the fire, you just kept hitting the alarm, smashing it until it stopped? The fire wouldn't go away. In fact, it would grow. That's exactly what happens when we misinterpret anger. We feel it, we act on it, we lash out, we hold grudges, but we never stop to ask why it's there in the first place. And because of that, nothing actually changes. Anger is not the problem. It's the symptom of a deeper issue. Maybe it's a boundary that's been crossed. Maybe it's an expectation that wasn't met. Maybe it's fear disguised as frustration, or maybe it's pain that we haven't yet dealt with. But until we pause and look beneath the surface, we'll keep mistaking the signal for the solution. Some of the greatest regrets people have come from moments when they allowed anger to take control. A heated argument where something was said that couldn't be taken back. A rash decision made in frustration that changed the course of a relationship, a job, a life. And in hindsight, they realize it wasn't the anger that was the real issue, it was what they did with it. But what if we started treating anger differently? What if, instead of reacting to it, we started listening to it? Instead of letting it dictate our actions, we used it as a guide to dig deeper, to ask the right questions, to understand what's really going on inside us. When we recognize that anger is just a signal, we gain control over how we respond to it. Instead of letting it consume us, we can use it to uncover what really matters. Instead of letting it push us toward destruction, we can let it lead us toward growth. There's a split second between something happening and how we respond to it. A tiny moment, so fast we barely notice it. But in that moment, we have a choice. Do we react or do we respond? Reaction is instinctual, it's immediate, it's driven by emotion, often fueled by anger, frustration, or fear. It feels good in the moment, like a release, like justice, like power. But more often than not, reacting impulsively makes things worse. We say things we don't mean, we escalate situations that didn't need to be escalated, we let our emotions drive the car, and before we know it, we've crashed into a wall we didn't see coming. Imagine someone cutting you off in traffic. Your initial reaction? Maybe you honk aggressively, maybe you curse under your breath, maybe you even speed up to show them they can't treat you that way. But what did any of that accomplish? Did it make the traffic better? Did it teach the other driver a lesson? Or did it just spike your blood pressure and ruin your mood for the next hour? Now take that same scenario, but instead of reacting, you respond. You take a breath. You acknowledge the frustration, but recognize that losing your peace over it doesn't change the situation. You move on. The difference? One approach leaves you feeling tense and angry. The other leaves you in control. But shifting from reaction to response isn't just about small, everyday annoyances. It's about how we handle conflict in our relationships, how we navigate challenges at work, how we approach difficult conversations. It's about training ourselves to pause, even for just a moment, and ask, what is the best way to handle this? Think about the last time you had an argument with someone. Maybe they said something that hurt you, and your reaction was to fire back with something even harsher. But what if you had taken a second to step back? What if you had responded instead of reacted? Would the conversation have ended differently? Would the relationship have been strengthened instead of damaged? The problem with reacting is that it's short-term thinking. It prioritizes immediate emotion over long-term impact. It feels right in the moment, but often leads to regret later. Responding, on the other hand, requires discipline. It requires us to slow down, to evaluate, to act with intention rather than impulse. It doesn't mean ignoring our feelings. It means choosing how we express them in a way that actually serves us. But the truth is, we live in a world that encourages reaction. Social media thrives on it. Headlines are designed to provoke it. The fast pace of life makes us feel like we don't have time to pause. But the most successful, the most respected, the most level-headed people aren't the ones who react to everything. They're the ones who have mastered the ability to respond with clarity and purpose. And the best part? This is something we can train ourselves to do. It starts with awareness, catching ourselves in the moment when we feel the urge to react. It continues with practice, forcing ourselves to pause, to breathe, to ask better questions before making a move. And over time, it becomes second nature. Instead of being controlled by our emotions, we become the ones in control. The way we experience life isn't just shaped by what happens to us, it's shaped by the story we tell ourselves about it. Two people can go through the exact same situation, yet walk away with completely different perspectives. Why? Because it's not just about the event itself, it's about the meaning we attach to it. Think about a time when someone let you down. Maybe a friend didn't show up when you needed them, or a colleague took credit for your work. Your first instinct might have been to feel betrayed, undervalued, or even angry. The narrative you told yourself was clear. They don't care about me. They don't respect me. I'm always the one being overlooked. But what if that's not the full story? What if your friend was dealing with something personal and had no idea how much you needed them? What if your colleague wasn't intentionally trying to take credit, but simply phrased something poorly in the moment? What if, instead of assuming the worst, you gave yourself permission to see another angle? The human brain is wired to look for patterns. It takes past experiences and uses them to predict future outcomes. If you've been hurt before, your mind will try to protect you by assuming it will happen again. If you've been overlooked in the past, your brain will look for evidence that it's happening again, even if that's not what's actually going on. This is why we can get stuck in cycles of negativity, because the story we're telling ourselves keeps reinforcing the emotions we already feel. But here's the truth. Your story is not set in stone. You have the power to change it at any moment. You can take the exact same situation and rewrite the narrative in a way that serves you instead of holding you back. Take failure, for example. One person fails at something and tells themselves, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed. Another person experiences the exact same failure, but tells themselves, this is just part of the process. I'm learning, I'll get better. Same event, two completely different outcomes. All because of the way they framed the experience. This applies to every part of life: relationships, work, personal growth. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're capable of, and how the world works shape our reality. If you constantly tell yourself that you're unlucky, that nothing ever goes your way, that people are always out to get you, your brain will look for evidence to support that. But if you shift that narrative, if you choose to believe that challenges are opportunities, that people are generally doing their best, that setbacks are setups for something greater, you'll start to see a completely different world. Reframing the narrative doesn't mean ignoring reality or pretending that everything is perfect. It simply means choosing a perspective that empowers rather than limits. It means recognizing that every situation has multiple angles and that we get to decide which one we focus on. It's about taking ownership of our own story rather than letting circumstances or past experiences define us. And the best part, once you start changing the narrative, everything else follows. Your emotions shift, your decisions improve, your relationships strengthen, because when you change the way you see the world itself starts to change. The people we surround ourselves with shape us in ways we often don't even realize. Their words, their attitudes, their beliefs, all of it influences how we see the world and how we see ourselves. Energy is contagious. Whether it's positive or negative, it spreads. And over time, it either lifts us up or drags us down. Think about the last time you spent time with someone who was constantly complaining. Someone who found a problem with every solution, who saw every opportunity as a risk, who dismissed new ideas before they even had a chance to grow. How did you feel after that conversation? Drained? Frustrated? Less motivated than before? It's not a coincidence. It's a direct result of the energy they brought into that interaction. Now think about a time when you were around someone who radiated positivity, who encouraged you, who made you believe in yourself, even when you were filled with doubt. How did you feel then? Probably lighter, more inspired, more capable. Again, not a coincidence. The reality is the people we engage with daily, our friends, family, coworkers, mentors, become a reflection of us. We absorb their mindsets, their habits, their perspectives. If we're constantly surrounded by people who thrive on negativity, who gossip, who blame others for their problems, that energy starts to seep into our own way of thinking. We start to see life through the same lens, whether we realize it or not. But when we make the conscious choice to surround ourselves with people who challenge us to grow, who push us to be better, who see possibilities instead of limitations, everything changes. Because just as negativity is contagious, so is optimism, so is ambition, so is kindness. When we are around people who operate from a place of purpose and possibility, it raises our own standards. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone who has a bad day or avoiding people who are going through tough times. We all struggle. We all have moments where we need support. But there's a difference between supporting someone who is working through challenges and allowing ourselves to be consumed by the energy of those who choose to stay stuck in negativity. The question to ask yourself is this: who do I spend the most time with? And what kind of energy do they bring into my life? Do they challenge you to think bigger, or do they keep you small? Do they inspire you to take action, or do they reinforce your doubts? Do they celebrate your successes, or do they make you feel guilty for wanting more? These are important questions because, whether we acknowledge it or not, the people we surround ourselves with shape our future. It's not just about the people either. It's about the environment we create for ourselves. The books we read, the podcasts we listen to, the social media we consume, these all contribute to the energy that surrounds us. If we're constantly feeding our minds with negativity, fear, and distractions, we can't expect to operate from a place of strength and clarity. But if we intentionally fill our space with wisdom, encouragement, and growth, we give ourselves the foundation to rise above whatever life throws our way. We don't always get to choose who enters our lives, but we do get to choose who we give our energy to. And when we make that choice wisely, when we prioritize being around the right people, in the right environments, with the right mindsets, we set ourselves up for something far greater than we could ever achieve alone. Emotions are powerful. They drive us, inspire us, and connect us to the world around us. But when emotions take the lead, they can also cloud our judgment, push us into reactive decisions, and pull us away from what truly matters. Purpose, on the other hand, provides clarity. It gives us direction. It keeps us steady, even when everything around us feels chaotic. Think about a time when you made a decision purely based on how you felt in the moment. Maybe it was quitting a job out of frustration, saying something hurtful in an argument, or walking away from an opportunity because fear convinced you it wouldn't work out. At the time, it felt right. Your emotions were loud, demanding action. But looking back, did that choice align with what you really wanted? Did it move you closer to the life or the goals you were striving for? That's the difference between acting on emotion and leading with purpose. Emotions are temporary. They rise and fall, shifting with circumstances, often pushing us toward immediate relief rather than long-term success. Purpose, on the other hand, is constant. It's the deeper reason behind what we do, the foundation that keeps us moving forward, even when emotions try to pull us off course. Now, this isn't to say emotions are bad. In fact, they're essential. They help us connect, they give us passion, they make us human. But they aren't meant to be in the driver's seat. Imagine a business leader who makes every decision based on frustration, fear, or excitement without considering the bigger picture. One day they're full of enthusiasm, pushing ideas forward at full speed. The next, they're discouraged, shutting everything down because of one setback. That kind of leadership creates instability. It confuses people, it leads to burnout and regret. But when that same leader operates from purpose, when they make choices based on vision rather than momentary emotions, they create something lasting. Look at history. The greatest leaders weren't the ones who let their emotions dictate their actions. They were the ones who stayed focused on their mission despite their emotions. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't lead the civil rights movement because he felt like it one day and changed his mind the next. He led because he had a purpose bigger than himself. And even when fear, frustration, and exhaustion crept in, he stayed the course. The same goes for business leaders, innovators, and changemakers. They feel emotions like everyone else, but they don't let those emotions dictate their decisions. Now think about your own life. How often do you let emotions guide your choices instead of purpose? When things get hard, does frustration make you quit? When fear sets in, does it stop you from taking risks? When excitement takes over, do you rush into things without thinking them through? These are all signs that emotion is in the driver's seat instead of purpose. Leading with purpose means stepping back before making decisions. It means asking, does this align with my long-term goals? Does this serve who I want to become? It means recognizing when emotions are influencing you and choosing to act based on what truly matters, not just what feels good or bad in the moment. This shift isn't easy. It takes discipline. It requires emotional awareness, the ability to feel an emotion without being controlled by it. It means training yourself to pause, reflect, and reconnect with your deeper why before taking action. And over time, the more you do this, the stronger that muscle becomes. You start making decisions that serve your future, not just your present. You become the kind of person who stays steady, focused, and intentional no matter what emotions come and go. Anger, frustration, and negativity are part of life, but they don't have to control us. When we recognize anger as a signal, shift from reaction to response, change the narrative, surround ourselves with the right energy, and lead with purpose instead of emotion, we take back control. We rise above the chaos, not by ignoring our emotions, but by choosing how we respond to them. The real power isn't in what happens to us. It's in how we choose to move forward.